Hello, this is Lynn talking with Peter Wakefield.
Hello.
And we're talking today about the astrological chart of Theresa May, the recently appointed Prime Minister of England.
And the leader of the Tory.
And the leader of the Tory party.
Incumbent, it should be said.
Yeah, she's the incumbent, apparently, as a leader, in that she had it thrust upon her. We're working from a solar chart here, her sun being 8 degrees Libra, her moon being in Virgo. So we don't have an ascendant. I mean, the first thing we note in an equal house system is her retrograde Mercury in what would be the 12th house in the solar houses. And it's a very wide opposition to Jupiter in Pisces, which is retrograde.
Mercury retrograde is naturally reticent and has a hard time driving oneself forward.
In Virgo, it's terribly modest and sort of self-effacing.
It is exalted.
It is exalted because it's selfless service often, which I think in a way Theresa May does give. Libra is a very gregarious sign, and I think this Mercury retrograde in the 12th, and Jupiter as well in Virgo, in what would be the solar 12th, is about working behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And she's come forward into the limelight. So this shyness and this selflessness is offset by the Sun in Libra, because the Sun in Libra is very gregarious.
Very social sign, Libra. Sun in Libra denotes refinement of character and finesse of character.
Yeah.
Especially in social circles. And of course, the main theme of Libra is balance. So while she's a politician, she's going to have to put into application, going to have to apply these,
this balance. Cameron was a Libran as well. So was Maggie Thatcher, and we'll come on to that point in a minute, because that's an interesting point. The moon in Virgo is conjunct Pluto and Venus in Leo here. So in the 11th house. Now, what I see with that is that it's modestly carrying a dynamic societal position. The dynamism comes from the Pluto Venus, because Pluto and Venus is very galvanized, and that moon in Virgo is the modesty. So it's modestly carrying this quite dynamic position, which of course she will have to do as Prime Minister, because I think before she was Home Secretary,
yes,
or something,
yeah,
which did not require the same dynamic as it will from the Prime Minister and the leader of the party. The Saturn Scorpio is squaring the moon and squaring as well the Pluto Venus. And if we break this down, what we see is, because Saturn's on the North Node, so that North Node, which actually is also in Scorpio here. Or is it just... No, it's cuspal between Scorpio and Sag. And the North Node, which is the dragon's tail and the dragon's head generally shows us what we're leaving behind and where we're going, as opposed to what we're leaving behind, which is South Node. So where we're heading, in a kind of generational sense, is often given by the North Node. Saturn here holds back that North Node to a large degree, and this is an interesting point.
It is, because Sagittarius gives far projected vision.
It does.
But this is held back by the Saturn at the moment because of the austerity issue.
Well, curtailing financial frivolity. This is what this person is all about, probably in her own life, and she will be about that for the next few years in the life of politics for the society of Britain. And I think that I've listened to Theresa May, and she talks about she's not the kind of schmoozing politician that, she doesn't party, she doesn't drink with the right people. She's
down
quite,
to earth.
yes, but no, she's quite self-contained and quite sort of unostentatious.
Very formal.
And I think that this shows in the chart here. And I think also the Saturn, if you take just Saturn square Venus on its own in the 11th house, this shows somebody who allows herself little pleasure, or if she does, it's particular pleasure. It's not a wide gamut of enjoyment, it's particular pleasures, and she allows herself those particular pleasures, but never goes overboard.
I think she has the right personality to carry us forward through this austerity because of this. She's got Saturn square to Pluto, and I put here, traditions don't run with reforms, resisting reform. And I think all the austerity that's about in the economy in the country at the moment.
Although hasn't she just got appointed somebody in the place of George Osborne?
Philip Hammond, yeah.
That's it, and he's poo-pooed austerity measures. And
they're trying to play it down because they want to build confidence,
yes,
and they want to build optimism, don't they?
They do, but he's definitely jumped on some of the more radical cutbacks that Osborne would have made. Thank heavens, because I personally don't think that was the right way to keep on doing that. So that is very interesting for somebody who has Saturn in her second house and he quite likes to curtail overspending. She appoints a minister who actually says, right, we're against too much austerity. And like you say, that might be a sweetening of the populace for a while.
See, she grew up with solemnity and austerity,
yeah, her
perhaps
father was
with
a
her
vicar.
father being vicar, which I would imagine, and may be wrong, would be very narrow in terms of upbringing. I don't know.
Well, I think these days that's not a given, but yeah, I mean...
In those days it perhaps was, I don't know.
Well, she was 50s born, wasn't she? So therefore she grew up in the 60s.
But what the point I'm trying to make is Saturn is austerity.
Definitely.
And I think she's well given to it.
And Saturn in Scorpio is absolute bleakness, really, sometimes.
Yes, it can be.
It's bleak. So that second house of her own earned money is like a bleakness. But I think what we see is the kind of doggedness of somebody who's a workaholic and works and believes that
very hardworking,
and has actually the memory from past life, or the belief that if I don't work hard, I will actually perish in some way.
Yeah, Mercury in Virgo is very hardworking,
and so is
assiduous, detailed.
Saturn in Scorpio,
very thorough,
Mercury
diligent.
In Virgo is all suggestive of somebody who is all those things. Anything but frivolous. And the 6th house Mars in retrograde in Pisces is very karmic. And it's opposition Jupiter in the 12th. So again, this is very humane service. I mean, that kind of aspect can be seen in the charts of people who become missionaries or give themselves to some kind of devotional cause. But really, in a way, Theresa May is a dyed-in-the-wool politician. She's a dyed-in-the-wool person who will want to serve people through
What will be interesting, Lynn, what will be interesting is that she's obviously taken the mantle of Prime Minister. And when anybody takes over a primary position, they come under the hegemony, the umbrella of an archetype. And the archetype of being a primary figure, such as a prime minister or a president or a pope, is that you come under the hegemony of the first ray of will and power. Now, Margaret Thatcher, for example,
she's been compared to Margaret Thatcher, and she is very, very similar. But there are major differences.
What happens is the personality will be will suffuse into the archetype. So she will now perhaps assume characteristics that are similar to bygone prime ministers such as Winston Churchill, who was a first-rate personality, Margaret Thatcher, who was a first-rate personality. Strong characteristics she may assume. So
Yeah.
that will be now interesting to see if she follows through and carries those qualities through.
I think it was quite an automatic thing for people to liken her to Maggie Thatcher because she's female like Maggie Thatcher.
Yeah.
But of presence, although I think Maggie was more, was in a way more kind of ostentatious and more of a show. I mean, she was very no nonsense. But she was more dynamic and charismatic in her own personality. I think Theresa May hasn't got much charismatic.
Maybe not at the moment, but what we've got here, I think she will grow to balance these.
This is not a criticism of her.
Because
she's just an observation.
She's got 4 planets here in Leo.
She has,
which
and
is
so
fire sign.
It is, but. It's Pluto and Venus, don't forget. So Pluto is very subtle in the way it allows Venus to display. So it can be very seductive, Pluto.
Venus in Leo allows her to be a little flamboyant when she wants to.
Except it's squaring this Saturn, which holds back. So she's frightened to be. She might naturally want to be, but there's a kind of fear of being.
Yes, but sometimes we see the fire expressing itself in little ways. Like you see men in businesses with very loud ties because they're able to get away with that.
Or jazzy socks.
Or in Theresa's case, she has a fetish for flamboyant shoes.
That's so cute.
So that's her way of expressing her fire.
Yeah, because that's Mars in Pisces. Pisces rules the feet in exoteric astrology.
Pluto in Leo as well.
And Pluto and Venus and Pluto in Leo. So yes, and that retrograde Mars in Pisces is memory of.
She will shine on occasion with that Venus in Leo.
She has to.
Yeah.
She has to.
She will be balanced.
I don't hesitate to say that obviously in private and she's probably a very selective private person and in her own circles and in her private life and with the people she knows and loves and trusts, she probably is quite a star and shines quite brightly because she's got obviously a lot of depth, but everything about her, all her energies are ploughed into that work, that lifestyle which is work. Everything is in the 11th, 12th and 1st and 2nd house in the solar chart.
Just a note on the Mars opposition Jupiter. Mars is retrograde, so there's a lot of metaphorical fighting in the chart. But it an image for this upsets the apple cart. When Mars opposes Jupiter, Mars is the upset. The apple cart is Jupiter, especially with a harvest in Virgo, Jupiter in Virgo. So there's an awkwardness there in ruining something that is good.
Well, when will this come about? What I've got for Mars opposition Jupiter is a magnification of virtue or sacrifice for specific causes. So she could sacrifice one specific stratum of daily life or life or compartment of known society for something that she considers quite virtuous and needs to be introduced into British lifestyle. I don't know, but it's definitely a magnification of virtue. See, that's what I was saying. In other conditions, she might have become quite devoted to certain humane causes or even certain Christian ethics or whatever. And if you look at her family background, her father was a vicar. So that Christian strain is there. Well, I don't know whether vicars are necessarily charitable or what. But I think so. What I think is that if you take into account the fact that the apple does not fall far from the tree, and people do incarnate into families time and time again, and with people they know. So obviously the religious bent within the family shows here as something that she's carried forward. But the way she's carried it forward is more into a service in humanity in general or society in general by political means, because politics certainly has taken over from the influence of the church.
Yes. Just two final things, Lynn, I'd like to mention. This Venus square Saturn denotes the hard lessons of austerity.
It denotes the hard lessons of being too egotistical and too flamboyant.
Yes, lessons is Venus, austerity Saturn, and finally this business
stops people from shining and enjoying as well. This is why I say restrictive pleasure.
Yes,
restrictive pleasure. It will make people guilty about too much pleasure.
Of course.
And that is the religious bent I was talking about. So
those planets in Virgo.
This austerity stuff will come from religious doctrine, and almost that will take over now into political doctrine if she isn't careful. Or perhaps she wants it to, I don't know. But
finally, this business over childlessness
is
a Saturn issue.
It is.
In Scorpio.
And squaring
Pluto, as I see it.
I see it as definitely squaring the moon.
Or planets in Leo, yeah.
Well,
which is the sign of the child.
The moon, actually, the moon squaring Saturn shows problems around childbirth. It shows restriction on childbirth that's not
infertility.
It can show that, or it can show difficult circumstances that forbid being a natural parent or not bringing children forward for whatever reason. And I think it's probably been a choice with her. Perhaps
it's a karmic issue with Saturn.
It's a work. Exactly. Yeah. I think what should be I want to say is that I think she was gracious enough to give that other woman, what was her name, Andrea Ledison, a job after she pinpointed Theresa May's childlessness, which I thought was spiteful and petty and is not worthy actually of a woman in politics in this day and age, and it's got nothing to do with anything.
But to Andrea's credit, she righted that, didn't she? She apologised.
Well, I think she had to. That would be that would be the political spin she had to put on it. But you see, if I were Theresa May, I would have taken a very, very dim view of that. But Theresa May won out,
isn't she? Yeah,
well, I don't.
She was very forgiving in that instance.
Is she forgiving?
Well,
she
balanced it. She justified it.
Is she forgiving in that chart? If we look at the chart,
do we see Sun in Libra? Can be very balanced, very
fair above adversity.
Judgment as well.
Very, very fair, so that some Libran people can come out of themselves, leave aside their own opinions and their own feelings, and say, what is the justice here? And that's why they make great judges and great diplomats. And I think that's what she's done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's to her credit. And really, people will respect her for that. Okay, so that really is, if we throw things forward now, we might speculate a little bit. We look at the way Saturn, which of course is the great leveller here, will act in her third house over the coming months and out to probably, is it the end of 2017 or somewhere in 18, to show the general popularity and the general acceptance, mostly not of the public, but of her peers. Because most of the public will agree, and probably a lot of politicians will agree, there is nobody else who could do this job now at the moment besides this woman. Who else could do it? But the popularity or her acceptance amongst her peers or her fellow colleagues will be everything.
Yeah, she's got the formal grit to carry out her duties.
Exactly like Maggie.
She won't be as charismatic as Maggie.
She won't be, but she might not be as extremely judged as Maggie. I mean, people either loved Maggie or they hated her. She was very... she divided people.
Yeah, she doesn't evoke that emotion in people like she did.
That's what I was meaning. She's not quite as charismatic or flamboyant in that sense. Not that Maggie was flamboyant, but Maggie was certainly a presence. And she was a show woman to a large extent, even although she's a tasteful one. But Theresa May is not, and I think has difficulty in perhaps... balancing that limelight thing with her own...
Yeah, she doesn't project her personality as
feelings or her own thoughts and opinions. Yeah. No, she doesn't project her personality. And actually, actually, neither. I mean, John Major didn't. If you think about John Major, and he was very unpopular towards the end.
That's what the mantle of Prime Minister can be like. Very formalising.
Perhaps it should be.
Yeah.
But these days, we are so used to personality and spin and celebrity and sensationalism that everybody wants somebody to be larger than life. But and if the country is to take the right way and people are to accept her in the right way and what she's saying in the right way, then she has to avoid that trap.
It has to be within the bounds of
formality.
And
you think about and you think about people like Tony Blair who were coached on how to make hand gestures and how to look at the camera and so on. That can only go so far.
Yeah.
And people are waking up and they're beginning to see through that. But the most fascinating thing now to come out of this is what we've talked about, is the question of archetype. And what you've said about archetype.
When people step into other shoes, or where shoes have been shared, when somebody steps into the role of being a primary figure, they come under the hegemony of an archetype. And archetypes are very strong, and it's very hard to shake off the mantle and the characteristics that go along with being a leader. And only time will tell whether she moulds to that.
Well, I think that probably
template.
What happens is that your own personality starts to feel at home within that archetype, if you see what I mean. Because all leaders take on an archetype in the way that sort of, I don't know, singers or whatever take on an archetype. And villains take on an archetype. But to distinguish them one from another, you look at the details of the personality. So the devil's in the detail. So as she gets more at home in that archetype of female prime minister, because don't forget, she's only the second woman in our history to take that mantle.
One thing to watch, yes, I agree. One thing to watch for is she's very astute in argument, in debate.
And that's what she needs to be.
And she wins usually in debate.
Yes, because she's moderate and deliberate.
So that
her arguments are deliberated. And
I think that strength then will be built upon as she gathers momentum.
Yeah, I think because everything these days is negotiation as we go into a wider world or a smaller stage of world politics.
She is a formidable opponent.
Everything is debate.
Yeah.
She was the best woman for the job. There's no doubt about it. And so, thank you very much. That's all on Theresa. We wish her all the best, and join us next time for the Celebrity Pod. In the meantime, for more information on our astrological services or more interesting stuff, go to perceptivity.co.uk. Thank you.
Thank you.